Good afternoon and welcome to this episode of the Ad Drop Podcast. As we continue our sprint through the world of college athletics, today we preview Emory University Softball with the head softball coach, India Chiles. Coach Chiles, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Now, you played softball at Ballard, which is in Louisville, which is a town and a basketball state. How was that?
It was great. I have four brothers. They all played basketball. That's what you do in Kentucky, kind of how you hinted there. But Ballard High School is a big sports school. It's a really good public school, and it draws a lot of not only state attention but national attention from families of pretty good athletes. So our softball program was always a pretty good powerhouse. I think the last couple of years was number one in the state, even and nationally ranked. Um, But the fandom is very strong, definitely from a state perspective in that school for basketball, but it has expanded and even like fast pitch softball has a really good following and a really good I guess lure or pull for a lot of athletes even moving into the state with the talent.
You look at Ballard and, like you said, the sports history. I talked to somebody from Louisville, and they said there's pretty much a ballot three. There's you, Devontae Parker, and Allen Houston. Like when you hear those other two being mentioned and being mentioned among those three, what does that feel like?
It's pretty amazing. I know Devontae Parker and his family pretty well. He grew up playing basketball. He's the same age as one of my brothers. And Allen Houston has a banner at the high school, huge one. And I actually just got one Thanksgiving. And it's hard to describe that feeling of gratitude and appreciation. Specifically with Allen Houston, like I grew up watching him, and even when in the NBA, like seeing him play and to think that I could even stand next to him in the sports world is pretty humbling. And I'm just thankful for it. Like those are two ridiculously talented athletes, and there's so many more that have come out of Ballard sport to sport. So it's just a lot of gratitude.
When you were looking at schools, what made you center on UT?
I didn't want to be too far from home. Just being realistic, like I have a big family, a close family. I grew up, my travel ball, and there was always at least one parent there. So I wanted my parent or parents to have the opportunity to come and see me play some. Um, and so sticking in the Southeast and in that conference meant a lot to me. I'm one of seven kids. My parents created a zoo. There's seven of us. And five of us played sports. So I had two little brothers that were still going through the AAU circuit behind me. So sticking close to home meant a lot. I wanted to go to a big university just, to be in that kind of like varsity spirit world, which is what I had at Ballard, right? So I wanted to kind of elevate that and go into that life. But I'll tell you, there's someone that had such a huge influence on my athletic career and that decision, and that was Pat Summitt. Growing up, knowing of Pat Summitt, I played basketball too. If that would have been a dream, if I was good enough to play for her. But just everything she stood for lady balls and just athletics for females. And when I went on my visit, um, I remember Coach Weekly saying, "Is there anything else you want to do while you're here?" And my parents are like, "Tell her, tell her what you want to do." And so I was like, is there any way I could be Pat Summitt? And they're like, come on. And they're like, you'd be surprised, but everybody wants to do that. So we went over. She came out of practice to come over and meet me and spend a little time. And she said, do you have anything for me to sign? And I was like, no, I don't. And she said, okay, give me just a sec. And she went in the locker room, grabbed a pair of practice shorts from one of the players and signed them and gave them to me. And that meant the world. She was really the pillar and still is of the women's athletics, but definitely at University of Tennessee. And to see and feel her involvement across all of the sports, not just for basketball, was a big deal. So I'd say the other piece of that was I grew up in the light, kind of in the shadow, I would say, of my one of my older brothers, who was just ridiculously talented at basketball. And he's 2 years older, and he started his career at UK. And so you could imagine being in the state and, like having that. So it was so much of like, I was really good at softball, but even on the news, it'd say, I was his little sister if they were talking about me a lot because he was just such a big deal. At University of Tennessee, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but they were one of the only schools to have separate athletic departments. So you had your men's AD, you had your women's AD. We had our own weight room. We didn't have to go with the guys and all of that. And I really liked just being able to create my own light as a female athlete and not have to share that space with the men's side.
Now, you perfected the art of slapping, which those are known as being able to use your speed to get on base. First question, how did you learn it?
So I picked up on that after my freshman year. Once I had my exit interview with my coaches, it was, just a conversation of the year, my freshman year in perspective and what I can do to find more time on the field. I was not a starter my freshman year, and they felt like I should give slap hitting a chance, just to be able to utilize my speed, and that might be my fastest way to get on the lineup card. And so um, my coaches sent me home with a DVD from the University of Arizona. And even at that time, it was kind of outdated. But they're like, take this, play around with it, see if you could figure it out. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. And so I took it and went home for the summer, and I went up to my high school just about every day trying to work it out. My high school coach arranged for a pitcher that had just graduated from the University of Louisville to come out and throw to me, windmill, every week. And it was just a lot of trial and error to start, but it gave me a good foundation to go back in the fall and be able to compete and work and train with my coaches and the other slap hitters. I'll say like that first year or years, it was a lot of trial and error, even with our working with our coach to figure out how we could all be effective, because what they were doing is building a lineup around slap hitting and around speed. And so they were actively recruiting more kids in who would learn it, who didn't know how to slap hit. So a lot of dedication, a lot of private workouts for us. But we figured it out, and we figured out a way to be effective and to control the offensive side for our team.
What are the mechanics? Like, if you had to kind of break it down to someone who had never picked up a bat,
Mhm.
what would you have to show, like, what would you have to instruct them on being able to learn the finer points?
Yeah, so I describe it a lot the simplest way. It's like slap hitting, for dummies. If you've never seen it, you're not familiar with the sport. It's like, okay, if you could combine, a track runner, a track sprinter, and a softball athlete, that's what it is. It's the fast kids, and it's an effective tool um, to get on base. The goal is to get to first base, no further. If you get more, that's a bonus, but the goal is just to get to first, right? You have enough speed to be able to be a threat to steal and get in scoring position. Um, the basic fundamentals, what you're trying to do, you have to control your posture a lot. A lot of people don't pay much attention to balance and posture, but you're trying to move, you're moving forward into the pitch, right? It looks like you're running into the pitch, but you're moving forward trying to hit a pitch that is moving at you and breaking, right? It's spinning, it's moving a lot. So, and on top of that, now you have to place hit it. Like you're trying to hit a certain spot or a certain zone of the field to get yourself on. And a lot of times you have to focus also on those runners that are already on base, because you don't want to get them out either. So it's a lot of strategy, very high softball IQ. A lot of the training of it, you have to spend as much time learning strategy, almost classroom style, as on the field mechanics. But you're most of the time you're trying to get the ball to the left side. You're going after the shortstop, which is very courageous because shortstops are very athletic and usually a top defender on the defensive side. But the advantage is their depth from you, and also they have to throw the longest across the field to get you out at first. So you want to keep the ball low, hit it on the ground, preferably, right? At the elite level, that's where most of the errors are going to come. Rush the defense, get them out of their routine fundamentals, and find a way to get to first.
You were a NICU nurse for 7 years. What did the lessons you learned taking care of the smallest little ones be able to kind of instruct you on your coaching path?
Yeah, so while I got while I finished playing softball, I switched into psychology just because I couldn't do my clinicals and play. It's virtually impossible right now at the collegiate level. So, talking with my coaches and the dean of nursing, it made sense for me to switch into a psychology degree, but focused on the health side of it. So as a nurse, I value that psych degree so much. A lot of times, you hear about athletes, psych and sociology, and it's just like pushover degrees just to get them on the field more. But the health focus side of that was so powerful in me learning just how to deal with people. How parents and that, with that profession are very vulnerable, right? They are terrified. And so there's just a lot of like social skills that I picked up on. And so kind of getting into coaching and training, that's the biggest part of the job. It's as important to focus on team culture, individual relationships on a team than it is to know the X's and O's. I think it's more important in today's world. You got to pay attention to the mental health. You have to have relationships with your players. It's just the world that we live in. So that psychology degree, that nursing experience, I use it every single day.
As someone who used speed to excel on the softball field, is speed something you can teach as far as teaching somebody not to become fast, but to become faster?
You can. I am not the expert on that. Um, there is a sport where they break their PRs every year, being track and field, right? So I am a believer that you can get faster and you can teach that. I am not the expert on getting faster. Now, I can teach explosion. I can work with strength and conditioning coaches. I can send my athletes to the track coaches, and I am no stranger to that. Help them, right? Teach us how to run better, teach us how to improve our personal best. I'm a huge advocate of that, actually. But I can teach how to maximize the speed that you currently have. And that's really where mine is. I don't know that I'm making them faster in the sense that they're already doing everything correct. Most softball players don't focus on running mechanics, so they're not running correctly. They're not maximizing what's already in them. I do believe that I can maximize their potential and get them to pull that out as far as speed is concerned. Um, but I leave it to the sprinting coaches to take the runner who's doing it right and make them quicker.
Emory is known as a high academic institution. Being a former academic All-American yourself, how, as a coach now, are you able to kind of have your players balance the academic side and the athletic side?
These kids at Emory, they know that they want to go to a high academic institution. Um, some of them it takes a little bit of convincing and recruiting, but they're already on that track, right? They meet the requirements to have an opportunity to apply at Emory, to be a competitive student. And so whether they realize it or not, they're already doing the things that are going to set them up for success at Emory. They're already challenging themselves in high school. They're already taking, the tougher courses that most kids are not in, right? They're making A's, they're passing their exams. So it's really just in recruiting, I just tell them you already have the tools. You're just going to have to continue them when you get here. Emory does a fantastic job of making sure that these kids are successful in the classroom. But they're very mature. These are very mature kids, their heads on straight. This is truly an institution where I can say, come to Emory and you are setting yourself up for the next 40 years, not just the four, right? So they do a lot of it themselves. Now, as a coach, I don't want to get in the way of that, right? We're not making millions of dollars off of softball professionally. So it's important to me if they need to leave practice early, to go to a job fair or they have these obligations. I usually say yes. I almost always say yes. Go do that. We can figure out the practice time. It's important that we stay on focus from the day one of recruiting of we're going to be the best student and the best athlete that we can be for these four. so that you're prepared when you leave here.
What did the first year as Emory head coach teach you, and what do you look forward to learning going forward?
Yeah, so um that the first year, this was my first time being a head coach at any institution. I've done it kind of with the elite kids at the travel ball world on a national sector, but never at an institution. The biggest thing that it did teach me was like I have got to pay attention to each of these individual athletes, like I spoke on earlier. It is so important that we as coaches, me as a coach, evolve with these kids. And you know, depending on who you talk to, like what generation we're from in coaching, you get a different story, right? You think of who I would look up to in coaching, and they'll say these kids are different, right? It's do what I tell you, don't ask why. But that's how parenting was then, right? Parents have changed, and as parents change, I have to change as a coach. Um, these kids are very close to their parents now and refer to them as friends. I did not refer to my mom and dad as friends. They made that clear. I am not one of your little friends, right? But now these kids will describe their parents every day. My mom is my best friend. My dad is my best friend. So these are the people they respect the most in their world. And I need their parent support, right? I need their parents backing for my program. I have to evolve and adjust my coaching also. I can't coach, you know, that rigid style or I'm kind of up on a hill barking orders. I got to have a relationship with them too. I have to show them that I care. And so that was the biggest lesson going through season is it's a challenge. That's tough. You know, as a coach, we just want to play. We want to study film. We want to do X's and O's, but I have to make a lot of time with each of my players to get to know them and to build a relationship. And what I learned as the season went on is, oh, they'll run through a wall for me. You know, when they know I care, they will run through a wall and they'll play their butts off.
Playing in the UAA, it is such a spread out conference as far as the distance between between teams and schools. How did you manage in year one to kind of keep your team settled as far as keeping their mind right and focused on those long trips?
Yeah, year one was tough. Um, but we managed and I've adjusted for year two with the travel. Um, you know, we are very fortunate that because our conference is spread out, we fly to all these destinations. We're very fortunate to live in Atlanta, the busiest airport in the world. So we get direct flights to all these locations. So when we're talking about flying, it can be burdensome, but we're getting there a lot quicker than most other schools are able to, right? Um, we can incorporate study hall and things like that. We had a lot of travel more than typical last year. Where I adjusted this year to make their lives easier is we can't control our conference schedule, but we are, you know, a school in a great location where we can play at home in February, right? A lot of schools want to be in Atlanta because they're going to get good flights and they're going to get a high RPI game if they can get on our schedule. So we can stay home a lot, non-conference, a whole lot. We really don't ever have to travel unless we want to. So that makes it a lot easier for our students, for our team. And then, you know, as far as the travel side, we're very blessed and fortunate that we don't drive to any of our conferences. We get to fly.
Now, being from Louisville, which is a noted food city, now living in Atlanta is definitely a noted food city. Is there any food from back home you wish that you could find in Atlanta?
um, I this is funny. There's two things that come to mind. And I don't know that it's there's good food here, but there's a few. Like fried chicken is really good back home. It's more so my family though than the restaurants, right? I'm not talking about KFC. Um, Turnip greens, you can't get them. When you're in the South, it's all collard greens, and my family like that is like a staple for us. Just to find some good turnip greens. The other thing is there's a chip. They're called Grippos. They don't sell them any further south than I think Louisville, honestly. And To help with that, my mom has sent me several cases of them, so that one is fulfilled. But I wish if anyone's listening, they could sell Grippos. It's a kind of chip in Atlanta. That would be great.
Last question for you. Derby pie, overrated or underrated?
Overrated, but you're talking to someone who does not have a very big sweet tooth, also. But if you
I,
haven't had it, you have to try it. So,
I agree. She
yeah,
is the head softball coach at Emory University, India. Chiles. Coach Chiles, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Ad Drop Podcast.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.